Hi and welcome to Tabletop Gaming. My name is Charlie and all of this is Edict, a brand new space exploration game with 4x components. Now, this game is based on the logic that you are looking into space for more resources. The Earth has been stagnant for some time and we're looking to the stars to be able to fulfill our needs and excess requirements. That means that licenses have been granted to big corporations. There are 5 big corporations that have a license to go out into space and to complete the edicts that are there for them. See where the name comes in? Edict is basically when someone in authority tells you to do something, and in this case it's going to be collecting specific resources. Being able to come back to Earth with those resources grants you solar coins, and those are what you're going to need in order to win the game, hopefully. But there are certainly other factors involved too. Now, I'm going to take you through a couple of the components to give you an idea on what they're going to be able to do and to give you a rough overview of the game itself and how it plays. Do bear in mind though, this is a pre-Kickstarter copy, which means it is basically a prototype. So some of the components are going to be upgraded and may differ from what you see here. But even with those components being slightly different, this is a really exciting game to take a look at, and this gives us a really good flavour of what's going to come from the final version. So let's start at the beginning. You are going to pick from one of 5 corporations in order to travel into space. Now, it's asymmetrical in the sense that each of those corporations give you different things. It might be that your focus is specifically on one area, which means your resources available to you from the very start depend on those. Now, these may seem mildly familiar in terms of names. I think it's to give you an idea of who it is that might in future be a big enough corporation to get those through. And once you select one, you'll see that there is everything you need in order to count how good you are at one or the other thing. So in this case, to start out, we're only looking at that top corner for the start and funds to understand what happens. But as we build more and more, we gain more and more from those icons. If we see here, for example, I have picked Alison and I'm going to get these as my starting funds. In itself, that's a nice start to the game. You're going to be looking at components such as these that are going to take you into space and around space, and then exciting ones such as this one, which will let you travel with those components back nicely within its little groove there too. Now, of course, what it is that you're going to be planting are various different resources such as these, which of course from left to right are an orbital platform, a colony miniature, a research lab miniature, and an extraction rig token. So of course we have our company, we have our crew, our way of doing things, but how are we going to get there in the first place? Well, we need a team that's put together, and that's going to come in our mission control deck. This is quite an exciting part of the game where you're going to be building your team and making sure you keep their loyalty to you to be the most effective. If they're not loyal or you think you can do better, you can purchase additional crew members that replace them, and they give you extra points or skills or bonuses. Now, to begin with, you have these sort of faceless ones, which feels quite ominous, but is true, and those you then replace with something from the deck as you get better and as you build those. So you'll see as well they have different skills available to them. These skills will increase depending on the ones that you purchase next. Say, for example, I was looking to replace the flight director and I have purchased this one here. I now have access to the next skill level too, as well as different components available to me through them directly. There are of course penalties, so if they are no longer loyal to you for whatever reason, or your loyalty alone drops to a certain amount, you will face penalties for doing so, and things will cost more as a result because your team is not cooperating. It's a really interesting way to build your sort of universe, your own little world. You are slightly different to everybody else because you start off asymmetrical, and then you have the team that's going to make a difference too. Those loyalty markers look like this, and there is also the option for a double time token, which has them working double time to be more efficient. Okay, so we have our spacecraft, we have our team, we have what we're going to be building, but what are we going to be collecting? Well, there's resources, of course. Now, these come in different forms, different shapes and sizes that you're going to be collecting. You'll see on the board itself, the little tokens grant you different things depending on where you are and what you're going to, and those then match up with components that you collect and you keep for yourself in order to fulfill those edicts. Now, of course, with the name of the game, we couldn't not talk about edicts because these are what are going to govern both your choices and where it is that you're going to be heading. So, you deal out edicts based on how long the game is that you'd like to play. You can play an epic game of 16 edicts, but it may take you a little while. Something like 6 edicts is going to look at about 100 minutes. So keep that in mind when you sit down to play as to how many you want to start off with. Now, those will tell you an event that has occurred, and for that reason we need specific resources, and you will gain solar credits for completing those. So for example, this is the coldest winter on record. So we need all sorts of different things like uranium and helium and methane. And this is an edict resource demand of 4. Should we complete those, we head to the bank here and we gain our solar credits for the edict that we've completed. It is of course a race to complete those, and you'll be fighting against your fellow players to do so, to try and gain as much prestige from those solar credits as possible. Now there are other things to consider too, not just your exploration, but also how you're going to progress. So you'll see of course on the board itself, you've got things like your colonial leadership, your political influence, the cards that you're going to lay as a result. We're going to move on to the feats that you've got to consider too. All the way bottom, we've got the propulsion tree, which you mustn't forget about because it's very, very important to you. And then we have these at the bottom, which represent future technologies. So there's a lot going on, but it's all built into the board itself. Now, speaking of moving further into space, there are additional options for your movement. Now, if you spy this on the table, I imagine you're waiting for me to pick it up to explain it, because it is one of those components where you go, ooh, this is nice. And that is the solar lab, which is a way of travelling slightly differently. Now, if I give you an example with it, if you want to move perhaps from Mars to Pluto, what we're going to do is find Mars on here. We're going to move it all the way around till we find Pluto, which is where we want to be. And then we're going to use this yellow marker just to find out how far away it is based on where those points intersect. So this is 6. Because of course, when we're travelling further away from Mars all the way through to Pluto, it's going to take some fuel. And now we know that it is a distance of 6. We now know that if we line it up with our skill and class, we can see how much it's going to cost us in terms of fuel. It's something that adds a little bit of fun to it. It's slightly more interactive than just assuming if I go here it's going to cost me this. It feels very exploratory and something very good for an adventure, which is precisely what this turns out to be. Let's take a look at the final aspect that I haven't mentioned yet, which is the additional cards. You have solar cards and you have politic cards. Let's start with solar cards. Now they're there mostly to represent how unpredictable it is moving into the solar system, because the good things can happen, bad things can happen. So if we turn one of these over, which will be prompted by an event or something discovered on the board or just as you move through, we see that this is about microbial life. So basically you've discovered an alien species, but you have 2 choices. Do you tell everyone about it, which means everyone benefits, or do you keep it secret, which means you gain the benefit for yourself? Now those are a choice that you make immediately once you've drawn it, and represent different options for you. The other cards are politic cards. Now these give you an idea of Earth's sort of gravitas within space. So sometimes again, sometimes good, sometimes bad. In which case, if we turn over the first one, it is a construct card and we get a colony green light. So you can create a free colony where there are 2 orbital stations should you have that. Now, if you've got all of that, all you need to know now is simply what you do next. So as you move through, there'll be different symbols that prompt different actions as you make your way towards those edicts. And there are a couple of things. There's lots of options available to you, but thankfully we have a quick start guide that just gives you an idea of what those symbols mean until you're used to them yourself. So whilst it may look complex to begin with, nice and easy to pick up. At the very end, you'll calculate your victory points based on both the edicts that you have received, the feats that you have gained, and everything that you have created in order to get to where you are and the resources that you have gathered. It can be a bit of a mystery, but remember, you can always play those more edicts to keep extending the game if you're super excited and you're super enjoying it. So there you have it, an overview of Edict, the components that you'll get, the things that you'll receive, and the motivations that you're going to have, and the way you're going to be travelling and why you're doing that. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more about Edict, you can head to edict.solar, and if you'd like to see more about tabletop gaming, you can head to www.tabletopgaming.co.uk or hit subscribe. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment if you're interested, if you have any questions about the game at all, and we'll be sure to respond to those. Once again, I've been Charlie from Tabletop Gaming. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.